Bonjour, Benesi, and Anid, edition of Kasamaquado Dem, Caperville, DJ. My name is Mitch, and first and foremost, I'm a father. I have 3 children on this earth that were born to me from 2 beautiful life givers. My eldest son, I raised on my own from the time he was 3 months old till he was 8 years old. He today, at 33, is in and out of homelessness. He has psychosis, he has drug addiction, he has alcoholism. Wawate Nini is my boy. Myself, as a little boy, I experienced sexual abuse in my community by 3 different men, and I had also extreme learning disabilities and behavior. I was on psychiatric medication from the age of 8 to 13. I had a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and a social worker. Today, after a long history of working in this neighborhood of 34 years, I'm with OPK, Ogijita Pimatsuan Kenamatwan. I remember Larry Morissette. I'd like to consider myself a community helper. So I'm involved in lots of different initiatives. Mainly, my base is something called OPK, Ogijita Pimatsuan Kenamatwan. And that means young warriors living a good life and going towards that good life. It's a program started by Larry Morissette about 15 years ago. He passed away about 3 years ago. And I had been working with him all along. And when he passed away, we had to, the board and myself, we had to look at ourselves and say, like, do we want to carry this on in his name? And absolutely we did. So GAIN is the Gang Action Interagency Network, and it started several years ago with folks from different already existing organizations that weren't primarily created to address the gang problem. They were youth caring services, people in health, people in justice, people in education, like just a cross-section of community organizations, mostly nonprofit.
The conversation we had almost walking out of the WPS center was we went there looking to see if there was an access route to the federal funding, because the funding flowed directly, we thought directly to the WPS, but it didn't actually. It flowed to the province. It was some of it to the WPS. But in that conversation, it was it struck me that even the WPS will say, well, when I need to exit somebody, I call Mitch. This is our police service, and we need a better exit strategy than just you. There's only so much you can do. So,
if our most marginalized, most wounded folks, who some of whom get involved in street life and gang life, if they end up doing better themselves, we all do better as a society. We're all in this together. Right? And if you go back to traditional teachings, we're only as strong as our most vulnerable. And you're right, there's only so much of me. If there was a dedicated program of this mentorship, I certainly could do training and consultation and almost a network of people doing this where we're all getting advice from each other and problem solving on the fly together. I'm doing it with Sean a little bit, of course, with GAIN, but it's just duct tape and baling wire at this point.
From my perspective, and not from the strategy that we developed, was with your help, was people think that, okay, a whole new building needs to be built, and there needs to be all this different space and all that sort of thing, and that's not what we're calling for at all with the strategy. Trying to convince people, and Sean, you referenced it earlier, you said, how effective mentorship is, and you just said, some people, that just the difference of one person in their life will make the difference. Yeah. It's like we can't actually say how many kids we kept out of a gang by having them associate with the mentors, but we know that it's effective.
It's planting seeds for the youth, right? It takes time. You have to understand that there's stages that people go through while they are involved in gangs. It's not just something like, I picked this up, I can put it down.
I don't imagine that people walk out of here with cheers and things like that. There would be a period of, leaving something behind, which can be really difficult.
10 years ago, everybody was talking about the gang problem. Well, today, everybody's talking about the meth problems. The system kind of perpetuates itself, and there's ways that happens. That's just the way the machine is running and has run for decades. And it's just a cycle we all have to get out of because it's no good for anybody. I'm going to say a little bit about the population I work with, the demographic I work with, young people, young men and young women. And I think people need to understand that as children, some of these young people have been raped, they've been starved, they've been tortured, they've been abandoned. Especially a young man that I worked with, he's since passed on from an overdose. But he used to talk about being home alone for days on end. And it wasn't so much the loneliness and the abandonment, it was the hunger. And he remembers it, and he remembers it physically. And he remembers having to look after his little brother and sister. And he's 7 years old, and I'm not sure how old they were. And he talks about going to McDonald's and grabbing up packages of ketchup to take home to squeeze into boiling water to drink as soup. And when he would share that story, he would weep. Sometimes when people grow up with hurt and woundedness and don't know what to do with it, it turns inwards and it turns outwards. A lot of the young men that I work with admit that when they were hardcore into the life, they turned their feelings off and became monster-like and did bad things. Coming out of that life, they start to feel again. And there's an absolute post-trauma that happens, both from what's happened to them earlier and what they've done themselves. And the post-trauma from what they've done themselves is worse. I've had people take their lives because of what they've done. So there is a remorse. Again, I'm going to go back to anti-divisiveness. I've heard a lot of people say, well, we shouldn't support and we shouldn't help and we shouldn't work with those people because they've done bad things. But if I work with and support and love these people that I'm working with, and then they don't do bad behavior anymore, isn't that good for all of us? We know how to do gang exit, and we know how to do gang exit strategy. And the only thing missing at this point is human resource. We need bodies. We need to be able to train people to do mentorship and navigation and life coaching and just bringing systems together to help vulnerable folks find a way to safety.